Hey folks, welcome back. This is Andy with the Porpros Almanac on our Twitch stream tonight. Today we're talking about guns, and I know y'all are excited specifically around organizing with guns. So, folks that are watching on my live stream from Twitter, I'm going to kick Twitter, Instagram. There we go. I'm going to kick you guys off so that I can actually pay attention to what I'm doing. Jump on twitch.tv if you want to hear the rest of the conversation. For the rest of you, welcome. I'm very excited today. First off, because I got Elliot. And what is on your head, Elliot? First off, let's start with that. What is this thing?
This right here,
That thing right there.
that right there.
I
If
wish
you
I could
recognize,
zoom in
if
more.
you recognize the logo,
Look at that. Look at that. What is this? We've got new hats.
got some new merch,
Yeah.
new swag.
Yeah.
Got
So
some new slouch hats coming through.
yeah. So that's exciting. We're also doing something that Elliot's been bugging me to do forever. We're talking about firearms, kind of peripherally. So we've got two folks with us from the Comrade Center. I'm going to bring them on. They can come say hi. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
How's it going?
How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming on. I don't see where your names are. I don't know why they disappeared. I can see you on the side screen, but I can't see it over your thing. I'm going to mess around and see if I can figure that out.
Impromptu
So if you guys-
introduction.
Yeah, Kevin, can you introduce yourself and we'll go around the room?
Kevin, with Comrade Center, kind of a little bit after since we started. I'm one of the instructors here. My background is prior Coast Guard, so I was a fire instructor for them. That's where I got my love of firearms. When I got out, finished school, and now I work kind of for the state in a pseudo-state capacity, but I still enjoy doing firearm stuff on the side and helping people get what they need.
Awesome. Frank.
Yeah. Hi there. My name's Frank. I work with the Comrade Center. I've been with them for a little over a year and a half, I think, at this point. Been shooting for 25 years as a civilian. No prior background in military experience myself, but also competition shooter, interested in self-defense, and very motivated to share my experience and my knowledge with folks who aren't traditionally welcome to participate in those spaces.
Awesome. I know Elliot's eyes lit up when you started talking about competition shooting.
Oh yeah, I'm looking into 3-gun. I got to move though.
Oh yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Not a lot in Massachusetts, so
It's a hell of a thing. I know of some spaces I can tell you about that do it though.
okay,
If you're up for a drive.
absolutely.
3-gun is easy in Mass. There's only 3 guns that are allowed, right?
That's true. That is true. Yep.
So what's really cool about this conversation is I think you guys had reached out to us, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, 9 months ago. And you were offering a class, so we reposted it, and you guys had some really good success. And it didn't even occur to me that you guys are pretty close to us. We're all in Massachusetts, so like finding 4 people in Massachusetts that are left-leaning and also into guns is like a feat. So I'm very proud of us for being here today.
We did it.
We did it.
Hell yeah.
The problem is this is all of us,
Yeah, it might be. It might actually be. So tell us a little bit about the Comrade Center, where it came from.
You want to grab that one, or
Kevin?
Yeah. So no worries. So I mean, we started as kind of a project under the SRA, umbrella. Mainly, the idea was, there are a handful of gun ranges in Massachusetts and in New England, but out here in New England stuff, we don't have a lot of private, public land we can shoot on. It's not like out west where you have BLM land. Not much you can do. So you really got to go to a private range, or join a range, and a lot of those are just really not spaces that a marginalized person is going to want to go or going to feel very welcome. I mean, I can go there, but even I don't want to talk to, Uncle Bubba about his gun collection and how much he hates, Brandon right now. Like, it's not my cup of tea, right? So we realized there just wasn't a good space for, to safely learn about guns, especially if you're a member of a marginalized group. So we said, well, let's start one. So we did a GoFundMe. We've raised about $43,000 at this point, to slow down a little bit, but we're still raising money. And the end goal here is to purchase some land, probably southern New Hampshire, because Massachusetts is just tough to find land in it. And in New Hampshire, it's a little more by right if you have the private land. And then there was no place to do it, so we're going to make a space to do it. And in the meantime, we raise some more money. Right now we're kind of focusing on doing Massachusetts license to carry classes. So both Frank and I both teach those. Frank just taught one, so I'm sure he'll talk more about that. And we're trying to get some folks in to do some kind of medical classes and some basic survival classes. Anything that people want that we can offer, where it's in our wheelhouse. We want to, be a conduit for that, because normally you go to find a survival class in Massachusetts, you don't really know what you're going to get into. So
Yeah, I think
try
the
to be
only
a
one
good place
that's
for it.
really easily, and I say easily very loosely, accessible is like REI classes. But even a lot of that stuff is particularly like pretty far out west in the state. Getting
Yeah,
something east of Worcester is really difficult.
exactly.
Um,
And also, you
but
just don't know. Your REI class could be great, or it could be full of people you don't want to deal with, and it's
and also that,
tough
yeah,
to know.
yeah, simply just being available. In terms of just pure availability, they're probably the only one, the major one that I can think
Yeah.
of. Um, so first off, I am very excited and hopeful that there will be a range in New Hampshire or of land available for use. That's super cool. I really like the idea of kind of using it as a one-stop shop for a lot of these things, because there's often a lot of overlap. Like I just said with like REI, like you're not going to REI to like do anything around firearms. So it's an interesting weird diversion that exists, where there are a lot of people into firearms and then all these other outdoor activities, but they don't ever really mesh together.
Mhm.
So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Comrade Center wants to take a more holistic approach, because there's more than just stuff to being an armed and self-sufficient community. Even just like knowing your neighbors' names, and we try to build affinity. That's kind of one of our goals, and our approaches to making folks safer.
Yeah, that's all of those things, like you said, are very holistic. You need to have those skills together to be successful at any of them individually. I want to back up a little bit and talk a little bit about the SRA, because I think that's the one thing, if people are on the left and they're just getting into guns, which I think is something that's happened in the last couple of years in particular. It's like, well, I don't know anything. I either don't feel comfortable asking family who have very problematic backgrounds or interests or whatever, or I just never grew up around firearms, so there's really no one to ask. And that was more my situation, where no one in my family was really into firearms. And I was like, all right, well, I want to do this thing. Um, how do I get into it when so few other people around me are into it? And then the SRA exists, and it's like, well, there we go. There's the organization to go to. And I think people are familiar with it. So I'm curious a little bit about kind of what your process was to say we're going to start our own organization, maybe some of the benefits of that, and then maybe some suggestions for folks in other parts of the country that are like, I'm not really satisfied with the SRA. If I were to do something on my own, what does that really look like?
Yeah, it's important to recognize that the Comrade Center is now fairly distinct from the SRA. It was birthed from a number of SRA Southern New England members' vision for something that could exist for the SRA and for people adjacent to it. And for folks at home who maybe, like the benefit of the doubt, don't know what the SRA stands for, it's the Socialist Rifle Association, which is a more pan-leftist sort of alternative to the NRA, is what they bill themselves as. And that's what drew me to it. I definitely grew up, being a civilian shooter for a couple of decades. My background came from that, like the NRA is the only gig in town. Happy to know that that's no longer the case, but it took a while to get there. And yeah, even in the past couple of years, SRA has kind of exploded with membership and regions. Even our own region has branched out into its own independent chapters recently. Massachusetts separating from Connecticut and Rhode Island, they all kind of break apart into their own chapters there because they just have such a surge of membership. And that was just mostly due to what came about as soon as Trump got elected. There's that public leftist awakening that, oh yeah, people want us dead and they have guns. What do we do about that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like we hate like I hate to harp on it sometimes, but like some of our biggest fundraising was right after January 6th, which is like a terrible thing to fundraise off of, and we typically we tend not to fundraise off it, but that woke a lot of people up. They said, there's people out there who have guns, who don't, who want to do bad things and take over and cause problems, and what happens to me if they do? So that opened a lot of people's eyes, which is for better and for worse.
Okay, so that brings up an interesting topic because the Second Amendment is fought over constantly. Whether you're into guns or not, you have an opinion on it. Um, so how would you say your approach is with I guess that the SRA and with what you're doing? How would you say it differs from what the NRA is and how they do things? What's the main difference? Is this literally just the opposite side of the tracks, but it's sort of cookie cutter, or how does this like
Yeah,
you
great
know
question. Yeah.
you know what I'm trying to say though?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the NRA loves to talk about the Second Amendment and forget all the rest of them. It's
Right,
like the 14th is also really important.
right,
The fourth and fifth are also really important. The first is really important. So obviously, the Second Amendment is where the kind of where the drama happens a lot of times because it is so close, and and I hate parroting any kind of right wing talking point, but sometimes it's like, look, you look at some of the various things that have kind of infringed on rights in Massachusetts, and it's like, man, there really is, like, I see what the NRA's point is, but they're also just they're so far like right, they can't get their heads out of their own asses. But it's like, man, because if the NRA took all of their power and like used it for good, right? They have a huge lobby, and they could like really sweep a lot of like central leftists into their camp, but it'll never happen.
right.
They end up going to the SRA, which is fine. I'd much rather have a single, very powerful block that just protected everyone's rights to to enjoy firearms as they see fit. But we're stuck with a left block and a right block, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Um,
and we see
is
that
what it
like
is.
the NRA has been doing this like PR thing where they've been trying to like show marginalized people that support the NRA, and it's
Yeah,
like laughable that like, oh, now it's okay, like now you're supporting these things. uh
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
remember their response to like the black NRA. Like there was an advert about that, and it's like, but the NRA is black. I'm like, is it though? I know that there are African American folks in the NRA. I know they support it wholeheartedly, but it is my experience and exposure to the NRA's marketing material and everything that they're very much in the camp of the Second Amendment is everybody's right, but, and then whatever follows that. If you're going to believe in the law of the land, like the Second Amendment is got to apply to everybody, even with acknowledging that like who wrote those amendments and who they were initially intended to benefit, being landowners, being slave owners, being privileged folks.
hmm
That like there should at least be some consistency, and the right just doesn't have it.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder who goes back and does the revision because, I mean, we're going way back, but I mean, you think about the Second Amendment says you can have guns, right, as a person, but then you go to say the Three-Fifths Compromise, and you're not a whole person, but would I get three-fifths of a gun? And what does that mean? Would we
Yeah,
still
right.
would we argue over it like we argue over guns now? Because I'm,
Or Dred Scott, and
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, so
And that is, I mean, and that can
I'm,
be tough
I'm,
sometimes for me, who's like
I'm
a
being
white dude.
I'm being funny.
Yeah, and that's something I struggle with that sometimes. It's like a white leftist who, I could easily walk into the most rightist wing gun store and be fine. Nobody's going to hassle me. I'm not going to be affected by it. If I'm traveling with my guns and I get traffic stopped by the police, I'm going to be fine. So, I have that privilege. And so, I feel like the best thing I can do is at least try to give back some of that in terms of, training and teaching folks and trying to advocate for everybody because, I don't I'm not building the Comrade Center for me. I don't need it. I'll go shoot it, Bubba's gun range down the street. It'll be fine, But there are people who do need it and either people who know they need it and can't get it, or people who don't even know they need it. That's the folks we're trying to reach and help out. And those are the people who come to our classes and the stories we hear and stuff. And that's important.
And
so what? Go ahead, Elliot.
Well, I was going to say that's definitely important because I found as I've started to shoot more and more in the past 5 years or so, it's anybody can go out. Not anybody. Well, yes, anybody can go out and get a gun if you haven't committed any felonies or anything like that. You can go out and get a gun. It's really not that hard, even here in Massachusetts, to do. There's a 4-hour class. They do charge some money for it, and there is some money for the application. But after that, the rest of it is government paperwork. You fill it out at the store. You get your, state compliant firearm or whatever, and off you go.
Yeah.
And it's not super difficult to do, but it's difficult to. How do you get comfortable if you're not a gun owner? And I think, Andy, this is what you were alluding to earlier. How did you get comfortable with owning a gun when you go out and you exercise your Second Amendment right? But, you don't know what gun etiquette is, or what do you do when you don't have your gun? Like how to keep it safe, how to keep it locked up, all of these things.
Yeah,
you're not sure how to properly do it, and where do you go to learn to do it? And that's the part of, I guess, the community that seems to be underserved. And when you want to talk about who actually needs to carry a gun and things like that, if there's people that do need to do it, where do they get the training to do it? And where do they get familiar, I guess? Where's that common ground where everybody has to start somewhere?
Yeah, and that's one of the things we're trying to offer, and that's why I tend to say, like, if you go out and buy a gun, you can get it, like you said, a pretty minimal course. But if you're carrying a gun around and you haven't familiarized yourself with first aid, with some of the basic safety procedures, then you're really not doing anybody a service, because you're much more likely to run into somebody who needs medical attention, or you're much more likely to run into somebody who's having a stroke or has fallen down. So if you truly want to be a helpful member of your community, about the fifth thing you can do is buy a gun. The first is get some basic first aid training. The second is again, like Frank said, know your neighbors' names. That's knowing your neighbors' first names can be way more helpful in an emergency than having a gun. That said, fifth, sixth, seventh on the list might be owning a gun, in which case, buy it. But then one of the things that at least I hammer when we teach the class is like you can kill someone with this gun, and that's a big deal. And you can even do it in a way that is not going to get you in jail. But are you ready when you pick up a gun to take on that weight? And do you understand what it is? And if you're not ready, then just lock it up and just take it out to go to the range with it. But if you're going to be somebody who's carrying concealed or carrying it around, there's a lot of weight there. And I think some people who don't really have or get the gravitas of that, just want to carry a gun around because it feels cool. And that's something we're trying to, kind of nip in the bud. At least make sure that people go through our class kind of understand the realities of it, because it's not, it's much cooler to not carry a gun around and not put you or other people in danger if you can help it.
Yeah, and I'll add to what Elliot was saying about you go take this class, and those classes are not well regulated. NRA certified classes can range from really good to my wife, when she took her class, she was it was in some guy's office at his house, and it had good reviews online or whatever, and she was he had a TV, he talked about the problem with black people today, and he showed us how to clean his gun by cleaning it in front of us, and she's I was out of there in an hour and 15 minutes at my certificate, and she's I don't know anything, this is frightening, and we're supposed to be the part of the country where it's hard to get a gun. And I think there is, and we've talked about it a ton, and I'm sure it's, I feel for folks that are probably watching, this is not a new conversation, how disconnected gun regulation is from actual equitable safety and all of the other things that we're talking about, the gravity of carrying a gun and actually knowing how to use it and having access to well developed training and education around the firearm itself is what's really missing. And it's frankly frightening in a lot of ways. As much as I agree everyone should be able to get a gun, that education component is also something that every single human being in the world should have free access to.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we make sure we teach in our class, which isn't necessarily taught in every class, is, if you every person in the country should at least be able to look at a gun and, if they feel comfortable, make it safe. Because you may come across a gun sometime in your life, at a friend's house, or you're cleaning out your parents' attic after they passed or whatever. You should at least, if you want to be, feel comfortable like picking something up and getting it to a condition where you feel like it's safe. Which for it's different for every gun, but it's generally the same. For all guns, no ammo in it, any kind of action open, stuff like that, verified, and like that is way more useful than like some of the schlock, like when I took my class many years ago, the guy made a big deal about talking about, in home defense, if somebody ever comes into your house, make sure you plant a knife on them. So that way, it looks like they came in with a knife. And I'm like, man, this is insane. Like, why are you you're an instructor giving people, and like, I know you're bullshit, but these other people don't know that. So one of these poor guys is going to like, somebody's gonna knock on the door. They're gonna panic, shoot him, and then be like, "Oh crap! What did I think? Oh yeah, I gotta put a knife on him. I gotta put a knife on him." Like that's wild. Like like you said, they're unregulated, and like that's the kind of stuff you get, and that's what you're not gonna get with us because that's crazy talk.
I'm dying laughing that somebody said that in a class, and like there was
Frank's got a better one.
No disclaimer or anything like that. Like I'm just joking. Somebody left with a certificate. Like that's what you do. That's fun.
No, it's unfortunate that horror stories like that are so common. Like just about anyone who has taken an NRA class once or twice, will have had something like that experience, either on the instructor side or on the student side. Fortunately, we can counter that. That's a solvable problem. Unfortunately, in a place specifically like Massachusetts, we do have a kind of closed list of available teaching material. The state has to approve specific certified basic firearm safety classes, and we currently teach one of this very short list.
A list that is not going to get any longer.
No. We've not us two specifically, but the SRA and specifically New England SRA members have been trying to put together better training material on our terms. But one of the bad parts about Massachusetts is that list is currently sealed, so we wouldn't be able to add anything to that. So we just have to pick up like from other organizations that have already put it out there. I'm certainly not going to give any of my fucking money to NRA. Sorry for cursing. I don't know if that's
all right. You're good.
Allowed. Yeah.
Elliot swears like every 5 minutes. I'm surprised he hasn't sworn more.
Not until after 9.
Yeah,
we're almost there.
But that does mean you have to get in bed with some pretty weird folks. Like the Liberal Gun Club is one of the assets that we use out here. They're an approved thing. But unfortunately, the Liberal Gun Club doesn't really represent our interests either, because liberals live to cede space to the right. So, that's not going to be very handy in the long run. So we do have to make this space. We do have to, create it, and not just borrow it.
And that's the one thing that liberals are great at. It's cutting themselves into separate groups and they're fighting with each other. Whereas you'll notice that in the NRA, there are people in the NRA that don't like each other, but they go, yeah, but we need to protect our guns. So they bond together. And the left has had a very hard time doing that for all sorts of reasons, which is good in some ways because I don't want to be tied to some. There's some leftists out there that I don't want to be tied to, but also bad in some ways because we don't have that block that can say, hey, we want gun education, but we want it to be, this kind of gun education. We want it to be, about making things safe and feeling comfortable and like understanding what's going on, like, stop the bleed and stuff. Like those are important things that I think you taught, to more people, and they're just not. And right now, all you get to do now is fight about like, you got to win the fight about like, can I have a gun before you can have any of the other fights, and that can be tough sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. And I think creating the space is definitely super important because there is the mentality, at least up here, where it's just sort of, I go get my permit and I get my gun and I'm good to go. And there doesn't seem to be as much fervent attitude to continue the education.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of Massachusetts only has an approved short list of classes and things like that. But even some of the people that I know who have gotten guns. They get their safety course, they go and shoot 2 or 3 times a year, and that's good, which is fine and fun and all. If they're shooting recreationally and what have you, you're not going to carry every day. But even so, I feel like there should be sort of continuing education and just a refresher once in a while. If it's stuff that you've already been taught, just a refresher to remind, and things like that. I feel like that's super important, and there isn't really um, a space like that available. I feel like the places that I've gone to, it's great. You got your gun, you got this. Now you got to go get hardcore tactical training, and you got to go buy, get all this gear, and then I want you to get your gas mask and hazmat suit, and then you're ready for anything. And it's like, all right,
Yeah.
that seems like a bit much. I'm sure there's a lot in between all of that might be reasonable, but I don't know. It's either you got your gun and you're good to go, or you get your gun and then you're GI Joe, like
Yeah,
straight
I
up.
feel like they putting together an infrastructure, almost like in college, you go to school, and it's like, all right, these are your core classes. There should be like this core component of educational safety that hits all of the different areas we've kind of talked about: gun safety, the peripheral safety things like stop the bleed, the more mechanical components of like how guns just fundamentally work, and like that way, if you do find an old gun, you basically know how it goes together, even if you don't know how it goes together, and to like have like an outline, a flow chart. And I'm sorry, I'm an accountant, so I think in flow charts, where you would be able to say, okay, these are the parts I'm interested in. Here's where you go next. And
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's ever done that. I mean, it might exist, and it's probably really expensive if it does exist. But I think something like if the, actually, I'm just going to stop talking. I'm going to ask, what are you guys trying to build out for curriculum, or like the stuff you want to teach in the future?
Right. Like you mentioned, a more kind of comprehensive defensive skill set. I would really love to, and I'm currently building out more information regarding the steps between, identifying a threat, responding to it, that don't involve a gun. Like if you carry a pistol but you don't carry a flashlight, I think you might be making some bad choices. And I'd like to ask you to reconsider.
Right.
We recently stopped requiring an LTC to purchase things like pepper spray, and that's now much more accessible for folks, and more critically for folks who legally cannot buy a firearm. A lot of people talk down on the effects of less lethal self-defense methods, but they are still options, and NA option is better than none. So that's one of the places I'm focusing currently.
Yeah, and definitely there's like the best self-defense tool is your brain, and sometimes your mouth. Like pulling a gun in self-defense is legit in a lot of cases, but it's also like kind of your last resort in a lot of cases. And too many courses basically say, hey, you took a 4-hour class, now you can go buy a gun, and now you're legally able to defend yourself. And you are, but you are basically minimally qualified, absolute minimally qualified. And if you're like a good citizen, if you're a good citizen's kind of a low term, if you're a good member of your community, then there's a bunch of other steps, like carry a flashlight, carry a super basic first aid kit, or even just know the basics, know enough to, if you see somebody who's hurt, that you can like put pressure on it and call 911 and give accurate directions to where you are. It's way more useful than being able to, shoot your gun accurately. And once you've got those core skills, if you want to do 3-gun or if you want to shoot recreationally, then start building on that. And if you want to learn, look, I was a tactical firearms instructor. That stuff's really fun. So if you want to do some of the fun stuff at a range where you're able to do that, like clear rooms and move like you feel like you're a badass, like that's awesome. You should be able to do that. But it's all building on these really basic skills. But I'm telling you, anybody who takes like if there was ever like a Comrade Center like tactical combat course, the requirements for that would all be like, have you taken our first aid class? Have you taken
Right.
our, like de-escalation class? Like, do you understand like all the other tools in your toolbox? And now we'll let you have fun somewhere. But who knows? I mean, so I know Frank mentioned the ones he's working on. I'd love to get a stop the bleed class off the ground, because it's just so simple and it's the most useful. I think it's one of the most useful skills you can learn, and it's also simple. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not, you're not doing like triple bypass. It's really simple stuff with a tourniquet, which are really simple to put on. That's a great way to save lives. So
Yeah.
I'd love to get that. Right now, we're just trying to find some more folks who can help us to have some more medical experience, so we can help do some of the teaching there. But I'd love to offer that kind of stuff, um, and more than just the basic firearms class for sure.
Yeah, I took a stop the bleed class about 2 months ago, and I think it was about 60. It was between $60 and $80. I want to say $75 might be right. And I took the class, and I had been waiting to take it, but because of COVID, there weren't many options available.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finally got one, and I would say 60% of the class, 60% of the information, I knew that already, but it was just the rest of the 40% that reinforced everything that I already knew. It
Yeah.
totally solidified like all the doubt and everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and under
So
stress, you're only going to remember 10% of that. So under stress, all you're going to remember is, all right, tourniquet goes here. Okay, tighten it. Because
right,
that's what your body does under stress. So a stop the bleed class will hammer some of the points home 4 or 5 times, so that if you remember one thing, it's put pressure on the wound. If you remember one thing, it's where to put a tourniquet, that kind of stuff.
right. And
Huge.
I think that 40% that I learned though is the 10% that I remember.
Yep.
And if that's all I remember, I think that's the most important part of the class. So
Mhm.
I don't know. It was a lot, but it was good information to know. And I remember somebody asked me like, "Oh, why are you taking the class?" And I was like, "Well, I got my gun a couple of years ago, so I can make holes, and I guess got to figure out how to like patch him up a little bit. It just kind of makes sense." And he
Yep.
just started laughing, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm kind of serious. Like it
Yeah.
just seems like it makes sense, you know." So
Mhm. Well, and I've hopped on this already, so I'll try to get off my soapbox. But like in my life, I've been in 4 car accidents and 0 gunfights. So I want. I mean, I have the skills, but like I'm much more interested in training people on how to, you know, help themselves out of a car accident than help themselves out of a defensive gunfight. I
right,
want those skills,
right,
but humans are terrible at risk management.
right.
We won't get on a plane, but we'll get in the car every day, drive to work, and it's like you're way more likely to die in the car.
Look at the
You know,
numbers.
yeah. So and so that's part of being a good member of the community. That's the stuff we want to do. And also, if we can get some land, in New Hampshire, then everything that comes with it. We want to be able to take folks out and do super basic survival stuff. Not talking like drink your own piss, Bear Grylls stuff, but like simple stuff like how to make a really simple shelter, how to find a dry spot to pitch a tent, how to make a campfire. Because not all of us were Boy Scouts, and if we were, we've forgotten half that stuff. So there's value in that, and being able to do that kind of really basic stuff. And that's and we'd love to kind of work this together. So you come up to the land, you stay overnight, learn some, you shoot a little bit, learn some basic stuff, cook some stuff, kind of form a community. And then the people you took that class with, you got this kind of bond, and you form some friendships, and you're able to kind of be a little tighter and see what people need. And then when push comes to shove, you kind of remember these things. You remember who you were with, and how it all worked out. And that can be, that's community building. Because again, just giving everybody an AK-47 is not a strategy to build a sustaining community if you need one. It's only a little bit.
I
Yeah, the
just
guns are
pictured
nice,
Matt. I
but
just pictured Mad Max so hard.
Yeah, right.
So good. I love it.
Yeah.
oh, I thought you had a question. So I was wondering, so for folks that live in different parts of the country, not in Massachusetts, and they're thinking, hey, me and my friends like to go shooting. We'd like to help other people who are interested, but we don't know how. We don't really want to get involved with SRA, or maybe they do. Like, what does this process actually look like to do what you guys are doing to start this organization?
The first thing you want to do is definitely identify and reach out to those people who share those genuine interests. Really, really gauge and honestly ask yourself, how much work are you going to be able to put in? No, not just how much you want to, but how much can you actually devote your time to this? Not even your material resources, just your time. It's going to take a lot of it. And then from there, you're going to have to strategize, like, what role are you trying to fill? What need are you trying to address? And then you can branch out your strategy. Oh, is this going to require its own dedicated space? How much is available? How much is it going to cost? Where is it going to be? How is it going to be accessible? And then you can start to get a feel for, like, oh yeah, you won't be able to do it with just the people you get initially. You're going to need to reach out. You're going to need to bring in help. Who can you organize with? Not just recruit from, but shake hands with and really join forces over it. These are all like super key steps that it took a lot of stumbling through to figure out, and we're not done. Initially, we wanted to roll out a roadmap for the SRA to use, and so far, like, that's not done yet. So I wish I could offer you a more concrete answer, like, oh, this is how we got here, but that's basically it.
Yeah. Now, I just want to ask before I pass it over to Kevin. Are you guys, like, how are you guys organized, like, legally speaking? Like, are you guys set up as an LLC, or is that something that you should do? Like, how does that work?
Getting in touch with a lawyer and figuring out if you're going to be an LLC, if you're going to be like a 5003C, 501.
Yeah, 50.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
There's a couple of them. They're all
like,
basically.
Those are options, and having someone who's familiar with law and finance that can tell you what you need will help you determine which one of those is the best tool for you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and something I would say is, you may not need to reinvent the wheel. Find some partner orgs. If there's orgs that are like 90% aligned with what you want to do, you may want to just join them and kind of add your weight to theirs, and then kind of drag them the last 10% of the way. That's an option. And like, be upfront about it. I'm not saying like form a shadow cabal, but join up and say, hey, look, right now you guys don't do this. You do all these other things. You don't do this, and I really want to do this. So I want to join you guys and do this. Most orgs are probably going to be happy to have you. And then at least then you'll have kind of some extra, institutional backing. Up here, there just weren't any orgs that were like that, like in a lot of the rest of the country, you have like freely available like land people can shoot on. So if you're trying to find a place to shoot, like the problem in like, Utah might be, how do I get marginalized people to know that I exist and that I can take them out to these places and you're shooting? You have a place already. You don't need a place to shoot. You have it. You have BLM land. Whereas we don't, so our problems are a little different, and a little more unique. So identify what your problems really are, and then see, and then one of the things that we try to do is like we try to ask the folks that we're trying to help, is this what you need? Is this helpful? Because like it's just kind of imperialist of us to just demand that we're exclaim proudly that we're making this space for marginalized people, if all the marginalized people are like, actually, we don't need that. What we need is over here. So we definitely try to, ask folks, is this helpful? And most people say, most people have said, and through some of the donations we've received and, a lot of social media and stuff, it is what people seem to want. So I feel like we're on the right track. But if we were getting a bunch of, red flags and warning signs, I think we'd be looking at, are we doing this for us? Or are we doing this for them? And right now, I think we are doing it for them, but we want to make sure that we stay that way. It's important.
Yeah. So I have a question. I saw that Southern New England SRA was looking to build a range. Is this the same thing, or is this different?
Probably the same thing, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was a couple of years ago that I'd seen people posting about it.
Yeah.
And I'd actually reached out, and I never heard back, because I was like, oh, this is super cool. I'm in Southern New England.
Well, you heard back. We're here.
Really roundabout, but we got there.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to work on those flow charts.
Yeah. I don't know what the diamonds mean versus like the soft rounded edges. I don't understand.
That's a different episode. Andy will go into all that. Please don't ask me about it.
Flow charts with the Comrade Center.
Yeah, right. We
One
can do it.
one's
We
a
can do it.
start, one's a transition. I'm not going to go through it right now. We'll get there.
Yep.
You can do anything with a flowchart. It's amazing. You can save the
True.
world with flowcharts, and I will fight anyone that says otherwise.
There you go. That's the spirit.
Yeah. So, yeah. Is there anything else you guys wanted to chat about while we've got you here? Elliot, you got anything?
Um, I mean, I could talk about guns. Are we going to do that?
I feel like it's mandatory.
Yeah, let me just make one last kind of pitch for ourselves here, right? So, if you're listening to this or watching this and you want to help, I mean, obviously we're still trying to raise money, but if you want to help and you have time, we'd love to have you help out. We need people to write blog posts. Like I said, we're trying to find somebody with some medical background to help stop the bleed. So if you have some knowledge, if you're if you're a survival person and you know about that kind of stuff, like we'd love to have you, even if all you can do is like write some blog posts and help us get some word out there. So, reach out. You go to the GoFundMe link that these guys have posted. You can find us there. Reach out. We'd love to chat with you. We'd love to bring in more folks into the fold. If you just like, if you're good on social media, like I hate Twitter. I mean, I don't like it. So if you love it and you're on all the time and you want to help, I mean, we need to be on Twitter more. And like, it's just painful for some of us to do it. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff and you want to just look for like the good retweets and the hot takes, like that's engagement and we need it. So if you want to help, we'd love to have you. Or the
yeah, and you guys are also on Instagram too, right?
Yep. Yeah, we thought about a Facebook, but that just felt a little too weird. So,
yeah,
Facebook is very weird, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
mainly Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, we have a Facebook, and I never really intended to use it. It's just like connected to our Instagram, but then it just started blowing up, and I was like, oh, I guess this is a thing we have.
I have to pay attention to this now.
Yeah, basically.
I think two of the commenters so far have been through Facebook. It looks like so.
Yeah,
Love it.
We've got like I think 14,000 followers on Facebook, and like
Damn.
all I do is just repost. Like it's connected to the Instagram. I don't.
Yeah,
really
just
ever check it.
repost your Instagram stuff. Perfect.
Yeah. So for folks that are watching, there's a bunch of you out there. So if anyone's got any questions, drop them now before Elliot starts talking about guns.
I'm going to start talking about guns.
Start talking about guns, Elliot. No pressure.
All
Tell
right.
me about your new gun.
Oh, okay. Well,
unless you want to talk about something else.
No, I can talk about my new gun. It's fine. It's kind of embarrassing, but I'm one of those poors, and I went out and bought one of the Turkish Benelli M4 knockoffs. It was like $500,
right.
And I just wanted to see. I just wanted to see if it was gonna run.
He tried to convince me to buy it. He's like, "It's great. Trust me on it."
I wanted you to do it.
Is that because the shotgun is the ultimate home defense weapon? All you gotta do is rack the slide and got bad guys run away.
No, well, I bought my over under. My first shotgun was an over under because I started to shoot skeet and trap, and it was a lot of fun. And so I bought a cheap over and under from one of my buddies who doesn't use this at all, and it is a lot of fun. But then I was like, I kind of want to get another shotgun, either a pump or a nice semi, just range toy, something to dump shells and have fun with. And this thing came out, and there were no reviews on it, and I was kind of nervous to buy it. But I bought it, took it to the range, ran it, and it's great. It's definitely not Benelli from the fit and finish, but it goes boom, and I didn't have any problems with it. And it's just always exciting to get a new toy and make a whole bunch of noise and have some fun and just destroy a bunch of cardboard, because that's what I did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So do you guys have favorite guns that you shoot at the range? Do you have range toys, or is it all business when you go? You're learning, training every time.
I mean, look, you gotta have fun. I mean, guns aren't toys. You gotta be respectful, but guns are also fun. It's fun to put a shotgun up and blast it. If you feel like a badass. Let's face it. My go-to, just because it's what I carried in the service and what I'm just so used to, is I have a SIG. In 40 Smith & Wesson, which these guys always make fun of me for, because like 40 cal is not it's not the ideal carry piece. It's a double stack. It's big, but the best handgun, the best gun you can carry is the gun the best. So this is a gun that I carried for years and trained with for years, so I'm super comfortable with it. Like people say, what's the best home defense gun? Whatever gun you're the best with. If you know your manual of arms,
Yep.
if you can run that Benelli in the dark, upside down, backwards,
Yep.
then with a fake Benelli, then that's great. If you can't, then you're going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Agreed. So that SIG, is it a P226?
Yeah, it's a 2-6, and it's called a DAC, which is a double action Kellerman. So it's got a cool little lever inside. So it's a double action pull, but if you go halfway out with the trigger, you can get a light single action pull. It's a very interesting. Very interesting gun, but again, because that's what the Coast Guard carried, so that's what I was familiar with. I'd love to complete my Coast Guard collection, but the problem is I would need a short 870, which I can't find, and I would need a short M16 or a Mark 18, but
Mark 18,
which I also can't find because those are much harder to get. And even if I'll pay for the tax stamp, I cannot find anyone who would even talk about selling me a short shotgun.
Yeah,
and it's like, guys, I think I can get a tax stamp for this. Like, I think I'm above board. Will anyone sell me this? And I was like, nope. It's like, come on. Because the short shotgun, because we were on boats all the time, so you need something to be short. And they were just like, it's a really fun gun to run around with. It's nice.
It's not going to put holes in the boat. It's great. It'll put holes.
It's only 14 inches. I mean, it was great.
That's funny. So the 226 is a great gun. I shot one brand new, hated it, and then I shot one that had years of abuse, and it shot better than the factory one. I don't know what it was. It was broken in. The action on it was like super smooth, and I was like, this is the easiest, smoothest shooting gun ever. And then I realized if you break guns in and take care of them, they actually get better. It's amazing.
They get better over time, yeah.
Yeah, they get broken in. And I think that was one of the craziest things that I learned as like a new shooter when I was shooting that old gun. I was like, oh, look at this beat up thing. And then it was amazing. So
it's like a guitar.
Yeah.
My friends, Browning High Power, their FEG, that is just abysmal and will only get worse because it's like this.
All those parts are getting hammered though.
It's one of those. It's an older Turkish gun, but yeah, it's a poor choice of a clone.
Somebody asked in the comment section for a new handgun shooter. I keep hearing that 9mm striker fire poly resin is the best. What do you guys think?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think it's got a 2-stage answer there. I definitely think that 9mm striker guns like the Glock or like the P320 definitely have a simplified battery of arms, and that they are quicker for new shooters to train with. I've definitely experienced that firsthand. There's not a lot of confusing elements to the gun that seem kind of secondary or arbitrary to its function. And there's not a lot to get wrong there. I think pistols overall are difficult to shoot well, and that if you're starting out, a handgun probably isn't the best way to go. But if you're new to handguns and not necessarily new to shooting, I think a striker-fired gun is a good choice.
Yeah, I always mean, if somebody has the pick of the litter, like for the first gun period, I love a good 1022 because one, it's super easy to manipulate. You get all the basics down. Ammo is super cheap, and it's just a fun little plinker. And you can get good with it. You can put a half decent scope on one and get kind of decent with one, and like really kind of build some skills, in terms of rifles without breaking the bank. Like you don't just spend $3,000 on a sick M1 that does a million things. Get a cheap 1022. Blast a couple thousand rounds through it, and then you'll feel really comfortable picking up something bigger and more exciting.
Sure. I've had to go through and teach my father actually just applied for his LTC last week after years of being berated. I guess he had enough, and he went ahead and did it. But now he's gone to shoot. We've taken him to shoot a couple of times, my brother and I, and he was like, I want to shoot the handguns. I want to shoot, this and that. And we were like, no, you got to start with the 1022. That's the Ruger. Yeah. It's the easiest thing to shoot. And he was like, I don't want it. Like, I want to shoot the handgun. I was like, you're not going to be able to hit anything. He was like, why not? And then I had to explain sight radius. And for people who don't shoot, like, it's easier to shoot a longer gun because of geometry. Mm-hmm. You have a bigger margin of error that's going to change your shot less with the longer barrel, longer sight radius. With a pistol, you can have your shot off by a little bit and you miss by a whole lot. And that's just that's just the way math works. And I had to sit there and explain it to him and draw on a cocktail napkin and all this. And he's like, oh, okay. I had to break out the flow chart, Andy. You know, he's an accountant.
Right? See,
So-
you gotta,
Ask
you gotta
him, like,
speak the
when-
accountant
when I was-
language.
You got to ask him, when I was a baby, did I run before I crawled?
Right.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, finally, I gave him a pistol and he shot it. And he's like, it's hard to hit stuff. And I was like, all right, pack it up. We're done. Like you finally, you learned something, took you 3 hours, but you finally learned something today. I think we're done.
Yeah.
Well,
And I mean, we're giving you advice if you're simply, if all you can afford is a cheap home defense gun or something, that's really what you need. I mean, look at what's available. We've posted a couple pretty good buying guides. We reposted them recently. We posted them when the first couple of stimuluses came out. If you don't want to get a 1022 and then a shotgun and then a pistol, if you just need something, to keep yourself safe at home, there's some pretty good options out there that aren't going to break the bank and you can practice with.
Yep. And get confidence and shoot it. Don't just get it and keep it in the safe. Get confidence, go out there, shoot it regularly, get familiar, and you'll feel a whole lot better about it.
Actually read your owner's manual, which no one does for anything anymore.
Right.
There's actually interesting stuff in these things.
Yeah,
that's what I did with that new
does not have
shotgun.
all the answers, despite it seeming like it.
Yeah.
That's what I did with that new shotgun. Before I shot it, I went and took it apart, and my wife was like, why are you breaking your new gun? I was like, well, first of all, I have to figure out how this thing works because I've never had a semi-auto shotgun before, so that was all new to me. And then putting it back together and then making sure it works and running it and making sure the trigger resets and stuff. Very, very nerve-wracking. But then after I did it once for the exploratory part, and then again just to make sure I had everything, I was ready to go to the range. I shot it, had a great time. But that's all part of the learning process. Like, I'm not new to guns, but that was still something that I had never done before. So if you're nervous about it, dive in, ask a lot of questions, because the people who do know stuff will be ecstatic to share their knowledge with you. And
everybody likes guns, likes talking about them.
Yeah, they love it. Absolutely love it. So don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. That just go have fun. They are fun. Be responsible, but they are fun.
Elliot,
And,
I cannot believe you
love
made
it.
it. I can't believe you made it like past them talking about a 22 with a nice scope and not mentioning my 22 with my scope on it that you got so mad at me about.
I'm embarrassed for you, so I'll tell the story. Andy had he bought a
long
10,
story how it started, but go ahead.
He bought a 1022, and when he went to pick it up, 1022s are not super expensive by any means, but he went to pick it up, and the gentleman at the gun store, I guess, had mounted a Vortex scope onto the 22. So he was just like, oh, here you go, it's all set up for you. And Andy was like, thanks. And he walked home with a nice piece of glass that was just as expensive as the gun that he had just got, and acted like it was nothing happened. So he has it mounted in the studio, and under it he's got a brand new 308 unshot. And I was like, you need to put that on there so that when we go shoot it, we can zero it, like get it level now so that we can go shoot it and like have some fun. And he's like, yeah, I'll get around to it. And then he never does. So every time I go over there, there's just a decent piece of glass on a.
Well, then it became a thing. Like I had to keep it there just for him.
It drives me nuts.
So I took it off when I cleaned my 22 recently. So it's no longer there. But every time I came over, he just get angrier and angrier. It was great.
It's blasphemous.
It's a fun constant. It scales up as you go. Like the more expensive gun, the more expensive glass, and vice versa.
Yeah.
He did it backwards.
Yeah.
I ended up buying a scope that I did not have a gun that could take advantage of it, so I lent it to a friend. But it was just such a good deal. Yeah.
You're a good friend. We should be friends.
I bought
we will be after this.
I bought a friend's gun many years ago, but it was a nice M1A with a really nice scope on it, which I ended up selling for quite a bit more than I paid for it. But the problem around here is it's like a 700 yard gun. And I was like, yeah, let me take it to the 25-yard range and zero it. Yay!
Yeah.
I was like, I have nowhere to shoot. The guy I bought it from, lived out west, and he was always shooting like quarter mile with the damn thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have anywhere to shoot this. I did want to address Blue Jay. Long friend of the Comrade Center, asked in chat if there's any value in having a mass license to carry if you live in New Hampshire. Probably. If you're going to come to mass, you have a bunch of rights, but then there's also people in mass don't care sometimes. So if you're going to be coming into mass with any regularity with a gun to shoot or something, if you go get that out of state, non-resident LTC, it's probably going to make any potential interaction you ever have with law enforcement way less of a hassle. Are you legally allowed to carry a gun to the state to shoot? Yeah, but like cops can also take your guns and make you go back to the courts and fight for it. So I would say if you live in New Hampshire and you're never going to come to Massachusetts, don't bother. But if you do come down here to shoot, or you come to ranges down here, you go to meets or whatever, just for the pure not having to put up with it factor, I would probably go through it. Just do note, if you're out of state going to the mass license carry, the first time you got to go up to the actual Bureau of Firearms in Chelsea, and it's a whole process. But it's doable. People do it all the time, so I would say yes. And then they also asked. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I would expound on that by saying, it's how much of a hassle is it worth to do? Yep. Because usually these things are only given to people who functionally live outside of the state. Maybe they work in Massachusetts and live just barely on the other side of the border, or their work just takes them through Massachusetts frequently, or they have some sort of work where a firearm might be required. That's generally the three most common scenarios in which an out-of-state license will be awarded. Mm-hmm. Without one, you cannot carry, period. You cannot buy ammunition, especially handgun ammunition. So you can't be in possession of handgun ammunition, I believe, is the thing. So yeah, if that suits you, if that's going to be a thing you need, then maybe, invest in a license that lasts exactly a year and costs $100 every time. Yeah. But some folks pay a lot more than that in just range fees. So it's got to be a personal choice. I'd say in New Hampshire, I wouldn't come to mass for much. And if you did, it would be to a range for a shooting event, and those are covered by FOPA. So that should be fine.
So someone also mentioned that they took their LTC at Mass Firearms. That's in Worcester, right?
No, Mass Firearms is in North Attleboro.
Oh, yeah, it is. You're right.
American Firearms is in Attleboro.
Mass Firearms in Holliston,
right?
Holliston.
Mass Firearms School. Yep.
Yeah, well,
I taught there last weekend.
Yeah, we just did it. I say we, but it was definitely Frank just did a class,
right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that might be where I actually got my LTC or took my class as well. Mm-hmm. And they said I expected a Chud Bonanza, but was actually impressed with the professionalism. Mine was pretty good. It wasn't too bad. There was a lot of ranting and raving about the state of Massachusetts, which is fair to an extent.
Yeah, I do that.
Fair, but I don't need to hear about Maury Hilly again from a gun owner. Thanks.
Yeah. We try to keep
don't
that
say
to
that
a
name
minimum
around here
in our class, but there's some things you do have to expand upon. Like the assault weapon ban is relevant. You need to know about it, and you might also benefit from knowing why it's bullshit. So we talk to you about that as well. I'd say Mass Firearms has excellent facilities. I really like it.
They have the best ventilation in the state. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but the ventilation in there is amazing.
You could keep a side of beef fresh in their ranges for a month. It's cold as hell.
Yeah, it's important though, because I've been to some places where it's not so great, and it's I don't know misfires because it's so humid in there. I feel like somebody's breathing on me.
They have a pretty good store. I found that the staffing at the facility itself tends to be a little dicey. It depends. I didn't have a lot of luck with folks who knew why I was there or what I was going to do. And that made things kind of complicated for me as an instructor because I needed to know which classroom I was in. They have 4. It's excellent. Yeah. They have 2 ranges. When you do offer, when you rent time there, you get access to their rentals for free. It's pretty awesome what you can do there. And then whoever rents the space and offers the courses, of course, it's all it's up to who you go to and who's teaching the class. And I hope that people come to us. We're here
Cool.
for it.
So you're hosting classes at Mass Firearms. So you said you were there a couple of weeks ago. Have you been doing that
This
for a
past week.
while, or is this sort of new?
This is a new thing that we're
Okay.
trying out. Really, because the Comrade Center right now is an initiative more so than a place. We've
Mhm.
got to go to where the facilities are, and we
Mhm.
are working, to find ones that are a little more exclusive. Ones that you don't have to walk past, the rest of the clientele to be in. But we had really great luck. We had a sizable handful of students, not the biggest class ever, but I kind of prefer it. The class itself, takes a while, and it takes longer if you have to show a bunch of individual people a lot of different stuff. So,
Well, I'll
yeah.
definitely keep an eye out for that more. I'd definitely like to pop in on a class for sure.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely
fantastic.
love to have you. And then Blue Jay also asked any thoughts on Pepperball. I don't have anything. I haven't prepared any thoughts or anything. My gut reaction is negative, but only because I don't know much about it. Because my gut reaction says if you're shooting someone with pepper balls, if you're shooting someone with that kind of less lethal defense round, it's already escalated to the point where you may just need a gun. Because you're not the police, so you don't have a use of force continuum. You have to go up and down. And if the threat has gone enough that you need to pepperball someone, the threat is probably also there where you could be shooting them. So and some pepper spray isn't 100%, whereas a bullet kind of is. So again, I mean, I would try to rely on the other tools. Who knows what the situation is? If you're out somewhere, can you just leave? Can you talk somebody down? Can you get out of there? Can you get to a crowd? Who knows? But to my mind, if push comes to shove, I'm not sure I'd reach for a pepper ball weapon over a regular weapon, because a regular weapon is going to do the job if you're at the point where you think you need to employ it on someone. But I don't know much about it. I'm not an expert. And if there's a more nuanced take, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Kevin here. In my study for less lethal options, pepper balls do come up. And it's important to define it for folks who don't understand. It's kind of like a paintball filled with a powdered version of OC. So it's a chemical that causes reaction with your mucous membranes, causes burning, irritation, swelling. It sucks. And as a liquid, I think it's in its most effective form because capillary action draws it into things like when you squint or shut your eyes in response to something being blasted in your face, it'll still seep in there and it'll blind you. That's really the most important aspect of pepper spray, is that it really does debilitate your ability to see. And from a personal defense perspective, that allows you a better means of escape or to fight back out of a situation where you're cornered.
Mm-hmm.
A pepper ball being a powdered agent is not supposed to be shot at the face. It's in a solid projectile that bursts, but it can still cause serious injury. So the instructions in the places where it's intended to be used are not to shoot for the face. So you're shooting.
I'm sorry. That's fun. That's funny to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You're shooting for the torso or the extremities, sometimes the lower extremities, and that discharges this cloud of dust that may not enter the person's eyes and may not enter their lungs, but it will linger. So there is much more likelihood of this kind of weird dispersed collateral effect where you may not affect the intended target. You may hit yourself. If the wind is blowing, that powdered cloud can move back towards you, and it'll linger on their clothes, so it'll agitate them whenever their clothes get wet, which may be for an extended period of time. But those are not situations in which you can really rely upon if your life is in danger. So I definitely say that pepper balls are kind of at the lowest end of OC. Especially because a lot of the methods that you deploy it from look like a gun. And then if someone sees you point a gun-shaped object at somebody, they're going to make a lot of assumptions about what's going on. And that may have effects on how you get out of that situation as well. And then the next up would be the gel format of pepper spray, which is like a really thick viscous thing. It's meant to increase the range or stop it from dispersing as a spray if it is windy, if there's like inclement weather, or if the target's a little further away. And that's handy, but it doesn't splash. It doesn't kind of disperse in the way that you'd intend it to. So it may not be as reliable, or the effect might be delayed. So like you hit somebody, but it doesn't kick in right away. That would not be ideal. Next up would be the spray format, which creates this kind of cloud, which has all of the negative effects of the dust, but is still like a more reactive agent because it is a liquid. It does linger in a cloud, so you can spray it to deter people from entering a space, like filling a doorway, and that can be really handy, but it's not ideal for using indoors. That would be a really bad idea. And then the liquid spray version, which is just a stream, and it's like a squirt gun. You spray it at someone, you shoot them in the face, you hope it splashes into their eyes, into their nose or mouth, and then it's a pretty solid option, judging by my research there.
And something, I'll say this as someone who's been sprayed, from my Coast Guard time. If Frank's coming to me and I hit him with the OC spray, I'm going to get a bunch of it too. So I would say if someone was like, should I carry pepper spray? I would say, sure, but find a way where someone can expose you to it first. Like, I'm not saying like spray your best friend, but like find a class or find a course somewhere.
Elliot, come over here.
You should understand that you're going to get the effects, and you need to know what it feels like. Because look, it's the worst pain I've ever felt in my life, but you also can fight someone through it, and you have to know that, or else you'll shut down too. And at that point, if you're going to take like all that effort, then it's like, in my mind, it's like spend all that time, with learning de-escalation and learning how to shoot. Because again, like it's we're not cops, so you're not held to this use of force continuum standard where you have to meet like with like, or like the citizen's ability to use deadly force is pretty cut and dry. You either can or you can't. It's not, there's no case law where it says, oh, his life was threatened, but he should have used the pepper ball, or his life was threatened, so he should have sprayed him with pepper spray first. That just isn't in the lexicon of like civilian self-defense.
We're also not trying to take people or things into custody. So like our
exactly. But like, look, that said, there's an argument here, which is like, look, I'm comfortable pepper spraying someone, causing them a pain, but I'm not comfortable taking a life, and I respect that. So if your block is, you want to hurt somebody because they're trying to hurt you, but you don't want to kill them, then look at those non-lethal options, because that is an option. And again, that's a personal decision. And if you're not okay, like you shouldn't own a gun. Well, no, you shouldn't carry a gun if you're not comfortable taking someone's life in a situation where it's there. And that's the gravitas you need to spend some time with, And if you're not, then you just take your gun to the range and then never carry it around. Otherwise you're going to put yourself in a situation that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah. So ninja stars are still in play. That's my main takeaway.
Yeah.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, Blue Jay had a follow up there, which is an interesting point, talking about pepper ball usage situations where melee is already in the mix, but not at gunshots yet. Like for example, like Proud Boys, I forget what PF stands for. Patriot Front.
They had a big banner over in Randolph,
so that gets into a lot of weird spaces, because if you're
using force.
Yeah, well, so in a one-on-one situation, if somebody corners you in an alley and they come with you a knife and you shoot them, that's a pretty cut and dry scenario. But if some lawyer can say, well, this guy brought these extra weapons, he knew he might need less lethal technology, he brought them into this place where he shouldn't have been, he escalated the situation, you're adding a ton there. And then it honestly comes down to stuff like, can you afford the best lawyer, and stuff like that. So it's tough. I mean, that's a tough situation. And obviously, those guys are armed, those guys are ready to fight, so you need to be able to defend yourself. But I would just be really cautious with, what you bring to that kind of a fight, because especially if some, district attorney can prove that you went there spoiling for a fight because you had all this extra stuff ready and you were, had all the paintballs and had melee weapons ready and had improvised melee weapons and stuff, like it's not going to, when you say it was all self-defense, they're going to be like, yeah, but why did you bring this? Why did you bring a shield? That's just what they're going to throw back in your face, which is tough.
Ninja stars? Seriously?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Why did you buy Ninja Stars from a Florida, side of the road Walmart? It had
Something
10
that's
throwing knives on them.
something that's often overlooked, and this is particularly relevant in our state, is know your self defense laws.
Mhm.
In Massachusetts, we have something called a duty to retreat. There are very few situations in which you will not be scrutinized heavily for standing and fighting. And you better hope that the jury, sees it your way. We do have a castle doctrine law that applies within the home, but as far as like being attacked on the street, a prosecutor is going to absolutely push that, like, we have a duty to retreat. Why didn't you just run? So why did you engage with less lethal? Less lethal is not non-lethal. It's still force. It's still dangerous, and you will be charged with assault and battery with a deadly weapon, because it is not your fists. It is not your foot. It is. Yeah. So yeah, like there's a lot of legal concerns about like how and when to deploy this stuff. That really it depends on where you live. And it depends on the specific jurisdiction within your state, because your local law might differ from the general state law, and that law might not be, the same as federal law.
Right.
They're allowed to contradict each other, and it's a fine line.
Frequently do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you also got to look at there's certain cases where if it's if it's a big protest, like are there 20 of you willing to go to take this to court and go down for this big fight, to make the point? Or there's certainly a lot more like you're gonna win a lot more hearts and minds if the Proud Boys beat the crap out of you and that's on camera and you're just like getting your asses kicked. Than if you're in there, if you're fighting this, gonna be like, oh look, Antifa is fighting the Proud Boys, they're all a bunch of losers, who can't get anything done. Whereas if it's like these innocent people were just protesting and standing there and they just got their ass kicked, like that's hearts and minds. So there's like psychological operation style things to talk there too. So. But definitely, if you're gonna engage in that level of like not one-on-one self-defense, but like big protest stuff, then there's a lot more to consider, for sure.
Yeah. One last question, and I don't know if you guys want to answer, but I'll give you the opportunity.
Yeah.
Is around if you conceal carry all the time.
I don't think anybody conceal carries all the time. I conceal carry often. But there's certainly times if I know I might be drinking or going out for drinks, I'm not going to conceal carry. If I know that I might be near a state line, especially where I live in the kind of Metro West area, am I going out with some friends, or you might hit Providence for a little while? I don't want to have to deal with having to lock the gun up and deal with that. So it depends. I try to more often than not, just because I feel like I have I have this ability. I feel comfortable carrying. I understand what my role is. So I try to where I can, because I would hate to be out and not carrying and be in a situation where I needed it. But there's, sometimes it's like, if I just want to run down the store and just have a t-shirt on, I'm not lock and loaded all the time. But I try to conceal carry when I can.
I will say I am one of those guys that conceal carries every day, except for when I would be committing a felony to do so. So there is a contrast to this. There's some people who carry only when they're going to where they consider to be very dangerous, or there's a whole spectrum of that. I tend to take the prophylactic approach of always be prepared and hope that you never need it.
Yep. And I also carry every day, unless I know I'm going out of state as well. Just because I started doing it, and it just, I don't know. It's not one of those things you stop doing, I guess. It's just like grabbing my keys in my wallet. I try not to think about it too much, but it's become second nature now. So when I leave my house, I have it. I got home before the podcast, so still right here. And hopefully I'll take it off in the next hour because it's getting a little heavy. You know how that gets.
Yeah. Yep. And I don't. I barely ever leave the house, though, so that's part of it. But yeah, I think that's everything. One last plug for your GoFundMe. For folks listening and not watching, it's gofundme.com/f/Comrade Center. and they're trying to build some pretty cool opportunities north of the border from us in Massachusetts. So, any last things you guys want to plug before we wrap up?
I'll just say thanks for having us on. I always like talking to folks. If you ever want to talk about police reform, I'll come back on and talk about that. That's my my little pet project there. I got a lot to say there, but it's not related to left and guns, so it's a different topic.
Cool.
But yeah, look forward to hearing from folks. Thanks for all the questions, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, Frank, anything?
No, absolutely. Just love having the opportunity to talk with more folks about our project and listen to what folks are interested in the community. We've got a website as well that kind of self-contains all this information, kind of makes it more presentable. And you can find links of where to find our courses when we're offering them there as well. You can follow us on Twitter if you're Twitter-minded. That's going to be at Comrade Center. Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for the time, fellas.
Yeah, we're going to kick you off the screen just for a minute so we can do our little shtick at the end of this, and we can chat a little bit after.
Thank you so much,
guys. Yeah. Elliot, did you have fun?
Yeah, I can't wait to go shoot with those guys. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I can't believe they're so close. I feel like that never happens.
Yeah.
So for folks that are listening, if you're watching and you don't know how you ended up here and you never heard of us, we're the Poor Proles Almanac. We are a podcast first, and then we do video stuff like this on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch second. We just recently dropped an episode on DIY plant domestication. So if you're into agriculture ecology, self-community sufficiency, collapse, whatever, prepping, you name it, that's basically what the podcast is about. So go tune in. Poor Proles Almanac. Next week, we are dropping a two-parter on the Maya Milpa system, which is going to be super cool. And then we're doing like a series of interviews really quickly. So we're going to be dumping a ton of content. If you guys enjoyed this, please subscribe on Twitch. If you're watching on Twitch, I think you can do an Amazon Prime subscription for free, and it throws us a couple bucks. Otherwise, you can throw us a couple dollars on here. That'd be great. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/poorprolesalmanac. $2 a month gets you early access to all of our episodes a week early, keeps the project going. You get to find out about what we're doing a month before anyone else, so that's pretty cool. We're going to be dropping our new hats. Elliot, I'm zooming in on you for a second, big guy. Look at that. Elliot actually only got the only orange one, but
I got outvoted for colors. That's not my fault. I tried, everybody.
What are the other colors? I forgot now. Green.
We got a gray one, and we have a khaki, like a tan one. It's nice. It's a nice khaki tan.
Nice. So we'll be selling those $23 shipped, so we don't have to deal with shipping BS, just 23 straight. And we've got like 25 of each, something like that, 22 of each, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
So
there's plenty. Come and get them.
Yeah.
If you like them, we'll get more.
We've got a few of them right now. If you guys are interested, we won't start selling them till next week. We'll post them on our Instagram and Facebook when we do. If you are a patron, you will have early access to buy them. So if they're super wanted, desired by people, you can jump on those first. And I think that's it. Anything else, Elliot? What are we doing next week? Do you remember?
For episode wise, I was gonna
Twitch. What are we doing for Twitch next week? Do you remember?
You're gonna make me pull up the calendar.
Yeah, I'm gonna make you look at the calendar.
Pull up the calendar. Next week.
Yeah. Do you know?
Yeah, Basic Garden.
Yes, we're
gonna do
garden automation. So if you want to grow like stuff in a greenhouse or under a tent.
I'll tell you right now, you're never going to learn how to grow a tomato from this podcast.
You will not. It is the rule.
It's never going to happen.
So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let's wrap it up, Elliot.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
This is fun.
We'll see you guys next week.
And we'll
Stay
do cool
tuned
stuff.
for more. Hell yeah. Later.